Welcome to the latest episode of BizTech Twist with your host, Bob Coppage, CEO of Simplex-IT, where we talk about business and technology and essentially just kind of compare the two. What I wanted to talk about here is and that sort of thing. So here's the thing. I'm old. And when I say I'm old, I'm basically 65 because that's old. And back in the day, when we talked about people who were presenting, and presenting is essentially when you are talking to people with a voice of authority of some kind or another. So you're going to present. You could be a salesperson presenting a proposal. You could be a content expert. You could be, one of those podcast idiots. Have you seen some of those guys? I mean, they're weird as all get out, but they're presenting. Back in the day, back in the 70s and 80s and the like, there was an organization, I think it's still around, but it was called Toastmasters, and they were the go-to because at the end of the day, your responsibility when you're presenting was to be perfect. No ums, no ers, no so's, no filler words or anything along those lines. You had to be spot on. You couldn't have typos. You couldn't have mistakes. You couldn't do anything that was considered today creative. You couldn't do any of that sort of stuff because you had to be perfect, and perfect according to a certain standard, because you will be judged on that. Now, notice I didn't say anything about facts. I didn't say anything about whether or not you're adding value to the organization or to whoever your audience is. There was much more concern at that point about how polished you were. And you had that whole thing about, you're not going to improvise any kind of your statements or summaries. And God help you if you actually go for questions and answers in the middle of it, because they could ask a question that was hard. You don't hear about that stuff much anymore. And honestly, I don't know if Toastmasters is still around. And if they are, I hope, and I'm sure they've adapted and all that kind of fun stuff. So if I'm using them as a bad example, my apologies to them. And also, really, how hard is it to master toast? I mean, for the love of Pete, you put some heat onto a piece of bread and you've got toast. Too much, you've got burnt toast. Not enough, you've just got warm bread. So the whole concept of them saying, we have to give ourselves some kind of title that looks like there's another form of toast. It was when you raise a glass and you do it. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. But in any case, here's the thing. There's been a transformation in terms of presentations and what our goals are for presentations. What is it we're looking to accomplish? And it's happened over the last 30 years. And I think it's fantastic. And that is, we want to be understood. We want to be, and the word I hear constantly, and I use it all the time whenever I talk to people about presenting, you want to be authentic. You want someone to basically listen to your content and they understand the value of the content, and they basically say, hey, an authentic individual presented to me. So it's one where I have absolutely no issue whatsoever listening to people who do or the like, or who stumble a little bit when they're talking about whatever they're saying, like, what I'm doing right now. Because as long as the message is authentic and as long as the value is contained and it's still followable and it is demonstrable, hey, the rest of the stuff is, I really don't care. I don't have time for that sort of thing. And if I have somebody who's going to present content to me and present value to me, I'd much rather they work on the content and the value and less time worrying, and I mean worrying, about whether or not they're going to stumble. Now, one of the things that's also happened, and this is that we are asking content experts to also present. Because one of the things we used to do is we used to hide the experts. We used to basically say, oh, you're the person who actually knows this stuff. We're not going to put you up on stage because you're going to intimidate people. You're going to be so concerned, especially in the IT world. IT people, we love to be right. Understood? Not so much. But we want to make sure we're absolutely accurate, which unfortunately makes it really, really difficult to come across effectively. But you have so much good content and there's so much sharing that these people could do. And so much more effective. If a cybersecurity expert can't communicate why cybersecurity strategies are so important and why cybersecurity threats are so real, their value whether it be from a market standpoint in terms of where they can go for better jobs, or to an organization, in my opinion, decreases by 20%, because organizations, we can't afford to lock people up so that they only do that job and they never talk to other human beings. That said, if you know any of those jobs, I want one, because I have to talk to human beings all the time, and they are annoying buggers, aren't they? But if that person can invest some time and effort, not to be polished, but to be authentic and to create communicated value, that person's value in the industry just went up significantly, especially on significant topics or technical topics such as cybersecurity, AI, big data, or just IT in general. And how do we do that? Because we're really not teaching people that sort of thing. Or if we are, we're teaching it as a secondary issue. So used to be, we'll send you to Toastmasters. And you'll go through this process, and you'll learn, and you'll demonstrate, and you'll have you'll do a presentation about how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. There are multiple methods to that. It's not as simple as toast, because toast is just one subset of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. There's a lot. I mean, crunchy alone, that's complicated. Anyway, but how do we make it so that someone can take a look at their content knowledge, their information, and then take a look at their audience, and based on their audience, create an actual translation, for lack of a better word? If you just have a professional speaker do it, they're not going to understand either one of those areas. They're not going to understand the content, and they're not going to understand the audience. And if you take somebody who's nothing but a technician, all they're going to talk about is the content. They're not going to talk about it in ways that make sense to the audience. So the people who can actually transfer from one side of the creek to the other, those are the ones who can actually bring great value. And we do a disservice to our industry. We do a disservice to our organizations. We do a disservice to ourselves if we don't take that seriously as an opportunity for improvement. Now, if you're a fan of Simplex-IT, and if you're not, seriously, never mind. You've seen that we do a bunch of videos, and we've got about 20 or so employees, and probably half of them at least have done at least one video. And some people we've had to drag kicking and screaming, possibly because we told them a dungeon was involved, but also because they were very nervous and cautious about doing it. And some of those people love it now. And they have done many videos. They've done several videos. And it's one of those, that's great for us, because we have more and more demonstrations about how the technicians here at Simplex-IT, by the way, managed services, co-managed services, simplex-it.com. You should go there. I mean, wait till this is over, but then you should go there and check us out to help your organization, because we're not doing a commercial, because this is a short video. So this is my commercial. Go to simplex-it.com. Yeah, anyway. Okay, enough of that. But this is a great opportunity for us to demonstrate how authentic our technicians are and how serious we are about our technicians being authentic. And when we're interviewing for new hires, that's one of the things we look for. Not necessarily that they already know how to present or whatever, because honestly, if they already know how, it's either a natural skill or they've been schooled. But are they willing to communicate? And does the fact that they're able to communicate, or does that goal resonate with them? That they want to be understood. They want to add value through the interaction with their audience, which often is just that end user. So to communicate to everybody within your organization that presentation skills, authentic presentation skills, not formal, is important and valuable, and not only valuable to their role as the organization where they're at now, your company, but also valuable to them professionally. Because that person's going to do much better on interviews. That person's going to do much better in terms of working on teams. That person's going to do much better in terms of career development. And you're going to do much better because they're able to talk with other stakeholders within your organization. So it's a win for everybody. And it's not a formal thing, or at least not to the I'm aware of. There's a lot of resources you can find that'll help. Put some comments and we'll put a couple of links, but let me know as well. And there's also one of the things that I ended up doing because I'm, a bit on the spectrum and I don't care for people. You know who you are. But I had to. I recognized back in the 70s, I had to get better at public speaking, at presenting, because I recognized the fact that was one of the best ways to demonstrate my value from a career standpoint. And it's worked for me, relatively speaking. And one of the things that I realized is I had to do it. So I found ways to do it from a volunteer standpoint, working with nonprofit groups, computer user groups, by presenting to people who just wanted to hear my stuff. I've spoken about, programming, about databases, about computers, networks, all that kind of fun stuff. I've probably spoken at least a couple hundred times over a 10, 20-year period. And boy, did I stink at first, but got better. Same thing for writing. You do it, you do it, you do it, and you get better at it. And then another thing I ended up doing, and this is a little bit on the weird side, improvisational comedy. I actually am a graduate of Second City's Conservatory here in Cleveland, Ohio. And you know what that means? My check's cleared. Yeah. But I also ran a group called Point of No Return Improv. I think they're still around, pnrimprov.org. I also ran that for about 12, 15 years. Okay, and improv is not just for comedy. It's not just a whose line is it anyway, but it is a way of taking and giving and building something that's going to be a little bit different than just your contribution or just their contribution. So there's a whole concept of yes and to be able to think on the fly and to think dynamically based on the situation and circumstance you find yourself in. I strongly suggest that if you take a look, you probably in your area, you probably have some nonprofit improv groups that are 2 steps away from, hey, kids, the barn's free, let's put on a show. And I tell you, it is fun, but it also, you have to be authentic. You have to listen actively because otherwise you're going to stink at it. And your other players will not want to play with you. So you have to listen and you have to take what they said, what your other players say, and you then have to turn that into something more. It's also called yes and. It's also great from a presentation standpoint. So if I'm up in front of an audience and I'm talking, I can look at the audience and make sure that there's enough people who are responding. So even based on body English, I can know to transfer or to move the topic around a little bit. So don't knock improv as far as a better way to learn both, personal interaction with other folks as well as presentation skills. So the bottom line is basically this, is that the whole concept of public presentation has changed dramatically over the last 40 years, because that's how long I've been doing this stuff. And it's become much more open for more and more people to do it. And it also has become much more important for all of us, especially in the technical world, to learn how to do it in order to manage or maintain our skills and careers. And the traditional ways of learning how to do it, I don't think are as useful as they used to be. So what should you do? First of all, make a comment on this podcast. What is it you do? What's the best way that you converse with people? What's the thing that you do that helps you come across as most authentic? Look for opportunities to communicate more, to converse more with people who aren't necessarily doing exactly what you're doing. And make goals and objectives to get better and get more experience doing this. So, bottom line, you got to deal with people more. That's not my strong suit either, but you got to do what you got to do. Anyway, so you know what you're supposed to do here, right? Okay, it involves a mouse. It involves some clicking and bells and, check boxes. It does not involve any kind of aquatic life. Okay? I don't want to see the picture of the fish, being smushed into the screen again. It's just not right. But make sure you subscribe too. And tell all your friends in your authentic voice that you're listening to Biz Tech Twists and Bob Coppage here at Simplex-IT. Catch you later.